Hey guys, welcome to the DevXP channel. My name is Seth Samuel, and today we're going to be discussing a very interesting topic, which is the topic of state management in React. Now, so you may ask, what is state management and why is it important? So, let me start with what is state management. Basically, state management is, as you know, when you work in React, you work with a lot of states. Basically, a state is just how data in your components and how it's represented. So, how do you manage this general, um, literally state of your application? How to manage the data and how to make data flow. That's basically what state management is all about. And why it's important is because as you begin to build more apps in React and you begin to build more complex solutions, you discover that a lot of data is going to be used by a lot of components. And in a typical React app, a fully functioning big React app, we are looking at hundreds of components, right? And you need a way that the data will flow well between all of them. And that's where state management comes. You need a way to manage all that data so that the data remain consistent throughout the app, and then you don't have to repeat yourself over and over again. So, like if you watch our previous video, you hear me talking about dry, which is the golden rule of programming, which basically means don't repeat yourself, and that's the idea. So, how do you manage data in such a way that you never repeat yourself and the data is consistent throughout the app? So, for the sake of this video, we are going to be working with the context API. And the reason why we are using the context API instead of using a fancy UI library like Redux and the rest is because the context API is number one built into React. So one of the reasons why Redux really got popular was that initially the context API wasn't as good as easy to use as Redux, and but the React team really worked on the context API, and I think that people are watered it down and then default to a Redux. Don't get me wrong, Redux has its own uses. It is very robust, but it's kind of a bit complex to wrap your head around, especially for newbies and people that are not used to writing complex applications like that. And for me, I really like the context API because it's just simple to use, simple and easy to use. It's simple to understand and easy to use. Okay, so let's get right into the video now. Okay, so on this app, we just have three components. The first component just gets a number, a randomized number, and shows the number. Just shows the character points of the number. So, for example, now it's at zero. If I just randomize, it just changes the character points. So, just generate a random number for every time you randomize, and that's the Unicode number, character number of it. Then this one, the second component, just gets that's a number like the first one, but it just shows the name of the number. So if you randomize, the number is five, and it just the number is written as five, and then keeps going. And the third component just get the number, and then it just show the Fibonacci sequence of the number, and it's just a basic application. So it's just a basic application that just does this basic thing. So now the goal of this video is to find a way of, instead of managing the state in each component, because how it is written is each component has its own each component manages its own state. So like this number has this number, right? This component has this number, and the next one has this, and then the next number has this. You see that there's repeated logic all over the app because it always handles the randomization internally, and there's no way for the data to flow because there's nothing that joins the three components. They just need the same data, which is the correct number that we are working with. but there's nothing that joins the three of them apart from the fact that they're displayed from one component, which is this component. So apart from the fact that they're generated on these components, they're showed here, there's nothing that is joining them. So now there are two ways of doing this and it will work. The first way is to do something called lifting up the state. And basically what that means is you find a common component that all the components share, and that component manages the state. That works in a very simple application like this one, but the problem now is you face a problem, because you face a problem called prop drilling. And what is prop drilling? Prop drilling is basically when you start passing in data from components, between components that don't need it. So say for example now in component 1, okay, so this is a very simple example, but let's say assume now there's a component. Let's assume this component 1 doesn't need the state, but then one of his child needs the state. One of his children needs the state. That will mean that you have to push that state. This component, this is the one that shares the same state with, share the same component with all of this, and the other three components. That means the state have to come from here. So the same number will come here, and then you pass it as a prop to component 1. Then component 1 will pass it to the next component. Then the next component will pass it down to the next component. So let's assume now, let's assume these three are three different components, and then it's this typography components that needs the data, right? Because it's the only one that is using the number. So let's assume that these are three different components. So that means component 1 you have to collect the states from the app, from this app component. It has to collect the states here, so it has to pass it down as a prop. But it doesn't use the prop because it has to push it down to the container, and the container doesn't use it. Then you pass it down to the typography. So you see, you just drill the prop. So you just keep moving between components that don't need it, just so that you can get to the child and to the place that the component that needs it. But context API gives us something better. So with context API, we don't have to repeat all of this logic, right? All we have to do is the same thing. We find a common component that all of them that all the components that we want the data in share, and then we don't have to drill the prop. We just use it from that component. So let me just cite an example, right? So we have a provider. Just have to create a provider in React. So you create a context, and it's coming from the create context, and you can see that we are literally getting it from React. So you can either import it like this, or you can import it like this. So whichever one works for you. So this is coming straight from React, right? You just create a context, and then you give it the data that you need. So these are just type from TypeScript, and then this is just the data, and you pass it down. Start passing it down. Now the context gives you something called a provider, and the provider is where your logic happens. So let's implement the provider now. So to implement the provider, all you have to do is wrap this. So like I said, you find the components that is at the topmost that all the components shares, right? And for this, so what you just do is you wrap the whole app in the provider. So you say provider, sorry if I can type. So you say provider, and then you wrap the whole thing in the provider. Okay, so now for you to use the provider, you have to provide it a value. So you have to say value is equals to, now the value will determine, will come from the type, from the provider type, and here we have the digits and the change digits. So now when you say digits, you can call it num, you can say it collects, it takes num, and we can come and get the logic from one of the components. So we can move this logic here, we can move the logic here, and then we can change the random, we can move the randomizer here. So basically you can just remove all of this and then move it here. That's all. So now the number will come from num, and so let's change this type name to randomize. So you can say randomize, and this gives randomize. That's all. So we can come here and say randomize is equal to handle randomize, and that's all. So all we have to do is import the states, yes, and so you need to change this not from digits to num. Change this from digits to num, and that's all. So now what you basically did is that we moved the logic from the app, from that component, from the component one to the provider, and by doing this, now all the data, all the components that need that data have access to it when they want access to it. Once they are wrapped from in that provider, that's all, they have access to the data, so no need to repeat the logic over and over again. So I can come back to my component one, and to use that provider, all you have to do is say const num. So let's just use the beauty of autocompleters. So we use a hook called use context, coming from React, and then we pass it the context that we are using, and the context coming from the provider, remember. So now all you have to do is import num and randomize. That's all. So we can come here and change this from randomize to randomize, and that's all. So that logic doesn't have to get repeated over and over again. So we can copy here, come to the second component, and we do the same thing. So this doesn't have to be repeated, just go like this, then this should be changed to randomize, and this also does the same thing. The component 3 does the same thing, and it has randomize, and that's all. When we refresh our app, everything is just there. So now to see this in action, all you have to do is call one, and then you see all of the components have the same number now. So the same 8, this one, the number is 8, and the character point is 56. This one shows 8, and then the number name is 8, and then the Fibonacci of the number is this. So if I press, the number gets passed out to other components. So the beauty of this, although this is a very simple example to just show you how everything works out together, but think of it this way. So let's say, for example, you are building an e-commerce app, and then you want the user, and you're using a wallet, right? And you want the user to only be able to add to carts when he has enough money in his wallet. So now you can see how the two components don't relate. So you have a post component, you have a cart component, and you have a wallet component, right? And these three components are not related, right? But now you can easily pass the amount of money that the customer, the user have in their wallet. So the post component only allows the adding of items in the cart when there is enough money in the wallet, and then the cart only allows checkouts when there's only when there's enough money in the wallet. So you can see how that kind of data. So from here, thinking of it from the UI perspective, right? There's no way that the three components meet because there are three different components, but the data is always needed by the three of them. So in that way, you can, with something like context API, you can use it to move the data around. And one cool thing about this component is that with context API is that you don't have to wrap it like this. The only reason why I'm wrapping this, the whole app is being wrapped inside this component, is because of the fact that all of them need that data. But if it's only these two that needs the data, if it's only these two that needs the data, if it's only component one and component two that needs the data, all I have to do is wrap it around the two of them, and then component 3 will not have it. The problem is now for this case it's so if I refresh and I do this, you can see that it's only the two of them that are changing now. Component 3 is not changing because component 3 is not being given the provider, right? So you can do it however you want. And another very practical way of using this is when you're theming your app. So say for example, you can check whether the app is running on a desktop or on a mobile, and then based on that the components your components behave in a particular way. Or check, you can use it to check if your app is on dark mode or light mode without CSS. So all you have to do is just do the check once, and then you wrap the whole thing in the provider, and then the provider provides all the things. So one of the classic way of one of the most popular way of doing this is if you're using this MUI, which is what I'm using to give me all these styling components, right? The grid and the typography and the rest. If you're using something like this, I think under the hood they use a provider. They use the context API also to just wrap the entire app um, inside that theme provider, and that theme provider is how the app is rendered. So I hope you find this video useful. Please, if you have any question or any video request, just let me know in the comment section, and I will be sure to answer that. Okay, so please like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what your favorite state management solution is in the comment section. I'll be sure to respond to all of your questions there also. And we also sell merch, the DevXP merch. We call it the Stack My Price Collection. Please check our store out. I'll be leaving a link down in the description. Just check out our merch and please patronize us and support us. Thank you so much. And let me know if you find this video useful, and I will see you in the next time.